When a kid discovers he has Superman-like powers, the world will become his to rule, and there will be no one strong enough to put a stop to his madness. And that's why today in Flick Summary, Brightburn. The film opens with a young Kyle and Tori Breyer, a marriage who can't have kids but doesn't lose hope of finding a way to become a full family. As the two of them are fooling around in bed, Tori hears something that neither us, the audience, or Kyle, her husband, can hear. But just 1 second later, we then transition to a homemade video where we see the Breyers' journey as parents to a baby. 10 years go by and we learn the kid's name is Brandon. He's a quiet boy who likes to play hide and seek with his mother and goes to school where he proves to be very smart. Now, how did the Breyers finally get a kid of their own? Well, they didn't. Remember that spacecraft that fell off the sky and into their farm? That was it. Apparently Brandon was inside the capsule, and to Kyle and Tori, this was just normal. So normal, in fact, that they didn't even notify the authorities and just decided to keep the kid as their own. In school, Brandon is drawing some weird-looking symbol and gets asked about the difference between wasps and bees. He goes on to give a full speech on the matter, and some of his classmates make fun of him because he apparently knew just too much about the topic for someone his age. Careful there. You don't want to bully this kid. Brandon's crush tells him not to worry as smart people usually rule the planet. And for the subtle smile on this scene, I could say he really got that into his mind. Back home, Brandon goes to sleep, but a strange noise wakes him up and draws him into the family barn. There he tries to open a door on the floor locked with some chains, but his mother gets there just in time to wake him up from his trance. The kid has no idea how he got there, so his mom tells him he was just probably sleepwalking. Brandon goes back to sleep and Tori shows some concern but tries not to think about what happened in the barn. The next morning, Brandon's father asks him to go get the lawn while he handles some other things. Brandon does as he says, but when he tries to use the lawnmower, the thing simply won't work. He accidentally tosses it, but the mower flies far away from where the kid was at. What a way to discover you have super strength, huh? Brandon goes to examine the mower and sees it finally working. As the blades are swirling, he thinks, "Oh look, this doesn't seem dangerous at all. I'm going to put my hand here and see if I am stronger than this metal." Fortunately for him, he is. At night, Brandon is celebrating his birthday with his family at a diner. He blows the candle to his cake and now it's time to open his presents. The guy from Breaking Bad, who in this movie is called Noah, gifts him a shotgun, but Brandon's father doesn't seem too happy about it and forbids his son from touching that gun. Brandon gets mad and throws a tantrum, but his folks punish him and they go back home. All of this turns out to be for nothing because Brandon's father calms down and decides he will take his son camping and teach him how to shoot some animals. I mean, why didn't you let him have the shotgun then? As the family is getting ready to leave, Tori goes up to Brandon's room and finds some disturbing pornography? Well, that's not what I would call it, but okay. So now Brandon's father has to have the talk with him, and trust me, this couldn't get any more uncomfortable for us viewers. Basically, Kyle tells Brandon it's okay to succumb to certain urges, and that's pretty much it. Unfortunately, Brandon understood something different, and as night falls, he goes to pay his female classmate a visit. Thing is, he didn't knock the door or anything, he entered her room through the window. The girl obviously screams in fear and calls for her mother to come, but when she gets to the room, there's no one there. Brandon's parents, of course, don't learn about any of this and think their son was just out in the woods peeing or something. The next morning, Tori goes to Brandon's school where she talks to the school counselor, who just so happens to be Brandon's aunt. Tori asks if she should do anything about the magazines, but merely simply says it's puberty stuff. Right. Hiding pictures of intestines is so normal these days during that stage. Anyways, Tori goes to check on Brandon and sees him drawing the B&B symbol we saw earlier in the movie. At home, Kyle sees his son staring at the chicken in the farm and doesn't think much of it until some hours later, he finds them all dead. Kyle begins to worry and tells Tori Brandon might have been responsible for this, but she doesn't want to believe him, as Brandon is the only son she could ever have, and the idea of him being evil is just too much for her. The next day in PE class, Brandon falls to the floor because the girl he stalked some nights prior didn't want to hold him during an exercise. He gets mad, and when the little girl is forced to help him get up, Brandon crushes her hand. Now at the principal's office, the girl's mother is fighting Brandon's parents and demanding the police they arrest him. But you know, he's a kid, and they all think it was an accident, so he goes free. Back at home, Tori finally tells Kyle Brandon was at the barn the other night trying to open the door where they stored the thing, and by that they meant the capsule he came into this planet. That night, Brandon is once again drawn to the barn, but this time he gets to open the door, and now it's levitating on top of it. Tori sees some red lights coming from the barn through the house windows and rushes to the place so she can make sure Brandon is okay. She finds it on a trance, and as she tries to wake him up, he falls, cuts his hand, and bleeds. Oh, so that's his kryptonite. Here, Brandon finally learns the truth about where he came from and is upset to know his mom and dad lied to him all this time. He storms off the barn and goes to visit the girl whose hand he had broken. There, he tries to apologize and even offers her flowers, but the girl here is clearly scared and tells him her mom doesn't want her to hang out with him. Brandon once again got the wrong message, and he goes,
"I'm gonna take care of that."
Now he's at the diner where the girl's mom works as a waiter, and well, let's just say that he took care of things. The next morning, Brandon walks down to the kitchen and has apparently forgotten about the discussion he had with his mother the day before, as he says he thought about it all and that everything is cool. We then see the police at the dinner investigating Erica's disappearance. The sheriff blows into the window and sees how the B&B logo starts to appear, which, if you haven't figured it out by now, stands for Brandon Breyer. Everything about this screams psycho. I mean, the kid even left his signature at the crime scene. That same morning, Brandon goes to see his aunt, the school counselor, and they talk about a couple of things. She asks him how he feels after finding out he's adopted, but Brandon just isn't upset anymore. In fact, he now claims to have realized that his real parents are not from this planet and thus he is superior than everyone else. As if this wasn't enough, he also makes it clear that he doesn't feel any remorse for what he did to his classmate when he broke her hand. Brandon's aunt clearly sees this as red flags and tells him she's going to have to inform of his behavior to both the sheriff and his mother the following morning. Brandon doesn't want this to happen, so that night, while Marilee's husband is out playing some pool with the boys, Brandon goes to pay her a visit at her home and threatens her by telling her that it wouldn't be good for anybody if she talked to the sheriff. Now, I can't help but wonder, what is the big deal about people finding out? It's not like they're going to be able to stop him or something. But who knows? Maybe the kid just wants to keep his evil side private from the world. Anyways, Marilee doesn't take the threat seriously, because you know, he's just a little kid, right? And asks him to go back home. Brandon gets upset and pretends he's leaving, but in reality he's just waiting for her to go to sleep so he can get inside the house, put on his mask, and well, end her life. Fortunately, as he is about to do so, Noah gets home, which causes Brandon to hide in the bathroom. However, he gets found and kicked out of the house. Noah is clearly upset about the whole thing and drags Brandon to his truck so he can drive him home. Brandon asks if he will tell his parents about what he did, and well, Noah makes the mistake of telling him that's exactly what he was going to do. Well, I guess you're gonna get killed now, buddy. Long story short, Brandon hits Noah and disappears. Noah goes looking for him in his truck but gets lifted up and then dropped to the floor where he breaks his jaw. Brandon uses Noah's blood to draw his signature on the floor and walks back home, leaving his uncle there to die. Thing is, he got his shirt all covered in blood, so when he gets home to a couple of parents worried sick about his whereabouts, he just comes up with an excuse that allows him to be shirtless and get away with what he had done. This time though, Brandon's parents see through his lies and come to the realization that there's something wrong with their son. They don't know he killed Noah yet, but they can sense he's not saying the truth about where he was that night. They eventually learn about Noah's accident, and when they tell Brandon the news about his death, he just sits there and says, okay, I mean, you could at least pretend you were affected a little so that your parents don't think there's something seriously wrong with you, you know? Anyways, Brandon's cold reaction to the news of Noah's passing away alerted Kyle, who straight on accused his own son of having something to do with his friend's death. They get into a fight and Brandon throws him to the wall. Kyle has now had enough and goes up to Brandon's room where he finds the bloody t-shirt. He shows it to Tori and tells her he's confident Brandon killed Noah. But Tori still doesn't want to accept that her son is evil and in turn blames Kyle for letting Noah drive home after drinking with them that night while they were playing pool. Seeing as Tori won't accept the truth, Kyle pretends to cool off and then arranges a day to go hunting with his son. The day comes and the two of them go to the woods where Kyle takes a shot at Brandon. Quite literally. I mean, he shoots him in the head. But oh surprise, the boy is still in one piece. Oh man, if only you knew he was bulletproof. Brandon gets obviously mad and goes after his father who, you know, doesn't have any other option but to beg for his life. Brandon doesn't listen and pierces his skull with lasers coming from his eyes. While this is happening, the sheriff goes to Tori's farm and asks if she has seen her son. She says he's out hunting with his dad and asks why he wants to talk to him. The sheriff shows her photos of Erica's and Noah's crime scenes where he found the B&B drawing and tells her he thought it might have something to do with his son, as his initials are also B&B, Brandon Breyer. Tori gets upset and asks the sheriff to leave, but then goes up to Brandon's room where she finds drawings of the crimes he committed and finally accepts her son is a murderer. Scared of Kyle's well-being, she calls him to tell him he was right, but it was already too late. Brandon picks up the phone and now is coming for her. The kid messes up the house pretty easily and Tori calls the cops who rush to the property to try and save her. But you know, they're dealing with evil Superman here. So guess what happens next? Tori remembers Brandon wounded himself when he fell into his ship, so she goes to the barn and gets a piece of the metal so she can stab her son and prevent him from ever hurting someone else. She plays it cool and pretends to forgive Brandon so she can get closer, and when she's about to get the job done, Brandon stops her and retaliates by flying her up to the sky and then dropping her to the ground. All the while, a plane is coming Brandon's way, but the kid doesn't move and the aircraft crashes, falling directly to the farm. This helps him sell the story that both his parents as well as the police officers died after the plane crashed and that he was the only survivor. The movie ends with several news outlets showing a mysterious figure which we of course know it's Brandon, causing chaos everywhere in Brightburn, and soon enough, probably the rest of the world. And that's all for today. Now tell me, what did you think of this movie? And which one should I do next? Let me know in the comments below. And as always, don't forget to subscribe, like this video, and share it with your friends.